Welcome back to another week of Instigating with Clarkey and Drury, brought to you by our friends at Coolbet. Canada betting season for Major League Baseball right around the corner. Also brought to you by our friends at Listowel Squash Courts and Listowel Vision Care and See the Game. And speaking of baseball, the magical time, the lockout's over. Optimism is running over in Toronto, and that's why we are very pleased to have our friend, the radio voice of your Toronto Blue Jays and my Blue Jays. Come on, let's go. It's Ben Wagner. Ben, how are you, buddy? How is sunny Dunedin, Florida?
Sunny Dunedin, Florida, more importantly than anything, is sunny, but also very healthy for the Toronto Blue Jays. And that was the absolute number one goal for the Toronto Blue Jays when they went into this accelerated spring training. And yes, CBA done, players are signed, Blue Jays active in free agency, active on the trade market. It is about as exciting of a time that I've been around the Blue Jays and being closely connected to it since 2013, since that 2013 season, right? Because everybody looks like, oh, what about 15 and 16? Well, hold on. Remember, that was in season. That was in season with 2015, kind of like, oh, this could be a thing. Going into 2013, when a lot of Blue Jay fans had expectations about the pitching, some of the moves that were made, that didn't pan out. That didn't happen. Hopefully, with the way things have been trending the last couple of years with the Blue Jays, much better position, much more balanced position, and very exciting. Oh, my God. So heading into the last week of camp, expectations are sky high.
As they should be. And I mean, I'm glad you referenced 2013 because we all remember that. And there was so much optimism, excitement, R.A. Dickey, Reyes around. They made a lot of big splashes. And you're right. I mean, you hit it on the head. It really did not pan out at all. Some people would even say, and I'd be inclined to agree, maybe the most disappointing season in franchise history. There was so much promise going into that, and it really didn't work. And then, of course, you're right. I mean, it was a mad dash past the trade deadline when Price and Tulo came into the fold that made the end of 15 and 16 so exciting. Now, a little different where they've got this great stable of young talent, and they've supplemented it with elite talent around the field. So let's start where everybody likes to start. Obviously, the pitching staff. Robbie Ray wins a Cy Young. He leaves, gets an extra year in Seattle, and good for him. Happy trails to Robbie Ray. He was a great soldier. And hey, he won a Cy Young. It's incredible. But they replace him with a guy who I think is very unheralded and I think is going to really win over the hearts of a lot of Jays fans, in Kevin Gausman. People don't maybe realize that he had the second most effective pitch in Major League Baseball last year in terms of whiff rate. His splitter is elite at making guys look silly. Ohtani's splitter was the only pitch in baseball last year that made more guys whiff. This guy adds a ton of pedigree to the top end of this rotation. What have been, your impressions of watching him so far and just how he operates out on the bump, Ben?
Very cerebral, loves to talk pitching, loves to think about pitching, his own pitching. He's somebody that has matured over the last handful of years in changing in scenery and doing that too. Somebody that didn't jump all in on the Blue Jays a couple of years ago when they were after him, but then saw what was happening to himself when he was in San Francisco, but also then what the potential of the Toronto Blue Jays and a chance to throw in the American League East could do for his career. I mean, these are important kind of landmarks as he was moving along. And Kevin Gausman is somebody out there that not only is thinking about this for Kevin Gausman, but he's a guy that's active on what we call the 10-pack. And those are 10 mounds in a row where the Blue Jays will have a couple of relievers or maybe a couple of starters all at one time throwing to individual catchers. And this guy is ping-ponging his way around, soaking up, how guys throw and hold pitches and their grips and how they change things, all these things, right? That is what is surprising when you get to watch these guys and be closer to them as they go about their work in spring training. You didn't know that Kevin Gausman was this sponge all of a sudden. You knew Kevin Gausman, has the ability to be a good pitcher. You hear about the projections and that splitter, you're right, is great. You get nervous when he starts to talk about blisters and you're thinking, hold on, is this going to wreck some point in the humidity of spring training? He's like, no, I loved having the blister. That tells me that I've got a good grip on the splitter. And when he throws it, he doesn't throw it all that often on the side sessions and bullpens. But once he gets into game activity, this is a guy that knows now in his career that he's got a place and he should be very, very, very comfortable in that place, especially now. Put a lot of pressure on himself when he was a Baltimore Oriole and really wilted under that pressure at times, thought he could go in and be the guy. And then all of a sudden he felt when the Orioles traded him to Atlanta that they gave up on him. And he credits his wife as hitting the reset button and said, no. Baltimore didn't give up on you. Atlanta wanted you. Think about that. You have to look at it that way. Then he heard and loved what he heard from San Francisco. Then he went out west. And, being around that culture, being around that enthusiasm, being around a little bit of a surprise that the Giants were last year, all of that is the catalyst going into an offseason, waiting on free agency and doing a lot of evaluating as well. With the CBA getting buttoned up, then, obviously a lot of promise and wondering what the Blue Jays would do after he was inked at the start of the winter. And being even more excited about it, right? With Kikuchi and seeing Matt Chapman come into the clubhouse. I think that only raises the internal, let alone the external expectations for Kevin Gausman.
Absolutely. And I mean, I love that you brought up the blister thing. I mean, he did a great interview with his now former teammate Alex Wood with the Pitching Ninja. And like, they were both kind of surprised at that. He was like, no, I like when it blisters. I like how my slider feels and I like how I can grip the splitter. And I mean, that's kind of really interesting. And yeah, he is definitely a pitching aficionado, a nerd almost, if you will, in picking apart other guys. And what a great staff he has in terms of picking their brains to play with in Toronto. And it's been announced that Jose Barrios is going to be the opening day starter. I think based on what he did for this team after they acquired him, he's earned that. Then they're going to follow him with Gausman. Ryu will go next, obviously looking for a big bounce back from Hyunjin Ryu. Alek Manoah, the rookie sensation, going forth, and they're going to go Kikuchi fifth. That's how they're lining it up to start. What's your opinion of that and what each of those other four guys can offer this rotation?
I've got a really good sense that the Blue Jays don't look at it as we have to rank our starting pitchers. They look at it from a mindset of what's the best matchup against the Texas Rangers? How do you plan to win 2 out of 3 or sweep a series? Then on the heels, you go into this juggernaut of what will be April. Starting with, on paper, at the start of the offseason, you thought the New York Yankees were going to be dangerous. I don't know that the New York Yankees pitching is made improvements to be dangerous. I haven't seen a lot. But you're always worried about the bats that are in the Yankee lineup. So that's why you avoid Hyunjin Ryu. And you go with Alek Manoah, you go with Yusei Kikuchi, you get Jose Barrios throwing in the midst of that 4-game series, and then you cap it off as well back with Kevin Gausman, and you avoid Ryu against New York and against Yankee Stadium. So that to me is the bigger picture here as the Blue Jays go into this with a lot of games in a short amount of time. They play 30 games in 31 days. The only off day I think is April 18th. So they're looking at this more on how do we get out of the gate in the best position possible. And I think those first 2 series, albeit a non-division opponent and an in-division opponent, you want to go and get as well as a start as you can. And that's why you look at who goes game 2, game 3, more for the matchup versus like, oh, the Blue Jays think Hyunjin Ryu is the 3rd best in the rotation. I don't know. I mean, there's an argument from last year that he might be 4th or 5th, depending on how you look at Yusei Kikuchi, and I've talked with some people within the organization about how they think Kikuchi could take that next step as well. So, look at it from a Blue Jay perspective of what gives them the best position to win ball games, especially out of the gate. Because, you can't raise a trophy in April, but man, you can certainly put yourself in a position to make it very, very difficult in April to leapfrog over the amount of teams that you may have to leapfrog over, or bury yourself to the point where morale gets shot, fan experience gets shot. They want to avoid all of that, and that's why April is going to be so important for the Toronto Blue Jays.
100%. And I mean, Kikuchi was an interesting pickup and they definitely paid him well, but they see, based on what we hear Ross Atkins saying in many interviews that he's done leading up to the season opener, they see a lot of potential in this guy. And of course, Pete Walker, who's definitely in some hot water and rightly so for some of his actions down in Florida. But in terms of his acumen, teaching pitchers and refining pitchers, look what he just did with Robbie Ray. Now, I'm not saying Yusei Kikuchi is going to be Robbie Ray 2.0, but they see a guy that has a pretty lethal, I mean, I've watched some of his games in spring training here, a pretty lethal fastball curveball combo. When he can get that curveball dancing, he's buckling guys, and they obviously see some real potential. And you mentioned, Ben, it's not really like a 1, 2, 3 down through 5 scenario here. The Jays see a collection of guys that all have different tools that they can strategically use and really fool people and try and win ball games more on the strength of their pitching than they maybe have been able to do in a couple years.
Tools to use, but also a couple of tools that they probably will limit for Yusei Kikuchi to make him take that next step. You referenced Robbie Ray. There's a lot of connection with Robbie Ray in terms of not the results and different stuff, of course, but both, yes, left-handed power pitchers. For Robbie Ray, it's basically fastballs and sliders, max effort guy, and a lot of the projections, a lot of the body type, that kind of max effort from a Robbie Ray standpoint is why the Blue Jays didn't sign him. Who knows how he's going to age? Max effort pitchers like that, they lose the feel of one pitch, then all of a sudden you got a problem. Dip in velocity with the true trick pony, that's a problem. For Yusei Kikuchi, it's a deeper repertoire, but it's also a repertoire where the Mariners wanted him to throw the cutter a lot last year. And the cutter just, for some pitchers, is not a good pitch. And he avoided the 96 to 97 mile an hour fastball velocity. And then on the breaking ball stuff for Kikuchi, those are the bigger separators. And I want to see his pitch usage early. And we may get a taste of what he's going to use and feature tomorrow against the Pirates when he, gets what should be the last tune-up of spring training. So for me, it's not about what he does use, it's about what he's not going to use going into that first start. But overall, yeah, you could take the mold like, hey, we've got this guy. We think these couple of things are going to be really good, but he has to throw strikes. And that's where kind of the emphasis on Robbie Ray, but also Steven Matz, who is another kind of, resurrected pitcher that the Blue Jays found some good innings out of last year with very low risk, very high reward. And that is, let your stuff play, throw it over the plate. Don't try to be too fine. Just pump strikes. The Blue Jays just got, last couple of years, not last year, but, the years prior, the rebuild years, right? They got too fine. They didn't have guys that had wipeout stuff. So they tried to pitch to weaknesses, and they got burned by it. They walked way too many guys, and that just cannot be the approach for the Toronto Blue Jays pitching staff. I don't care who's on the mound, but Kikuchi is one of those guys that they're going to need quality pitches, high strike percentages, and he's got to go out there and give them some depth. It can't be a 5 and dive. You're going to need some starts from Yusei Kikuchi and let that stuff really travel. Let it play within the box.
And then in terms of the bullpen, of course, Jordan Romano had, I would call it a breakout year. I mean, he's always shown solid stuff and a lot of potential. He really kind of knuckled down on the closer role potentially here. And Tim Meza really, gave them some solid bullpen outings down the stretch. If only they could have found that a little earlier in the year. They add a guy who's got a really solid fastball slider combo in Yimi Garcia, who pitched pretty quality innings as a Marlin. The bullpen looks pretty good.
Bullpen looks pretty good. I think that there is an opportunity to improve. They lost a lefty that had options like Kirby Snead. The Blue Jays got Ryan Borucki. Is he going to show them enough in camp? We really haven't seen a lot of Ryan Borucki in games. So whatever he's doing on the backfield and that data is being harnessed, and he's trying to throw more strikes and be a little bit more aggressive in the mound. You've got Tim Meza, you got Taylor Saucedo. So yeah, you got Andrew Vasquez that's in there. The lefty combinations are very interesting for how the Blue Jays build out their roster. From a right-handed perspective, the guys Jimmy Garcia is going to be an important piece of the puzzle. You've got Jordan Romano in there. Adam Simber, who continues to look very, very good. Trevor Richards, who's very good. I think David Phelps is going to make the team as well. It's a well-rounded bullpen of experience and different looks that the Blue Jays are going to have to show, especially the American League East with the frequency of these ball clubs. And also, like I keep harping on this April schedule with the Astros and the Red Sox and the Oakland Athletics. All these teams are cycling through here, and they're all improved. Maybe not Oakland as much because they've shocked away a lot of guys.
Yeah, not them.
No, not them any longer. But a lot of expectations in Texas coming to town. A lot of expectations with the Astros coming to town, and that Astros Red Sox pocket of play could be very important during this stretch. And again, that's why you have to play this all out. So usage around these guys will be very important as well for the Blue Jays. So will be very, very interesting to see who wins jobs down the stretch. What happens to Julian Merriweather? What happens to Nate Pearson? Two major question marks, and question marks for a camp that doesn't have a lot of question marks from a position player standpoint. And I know the Greg Bird name is going to come off your lips in about 2 minutes, but when it comes to the Blue Jays bullpen, there are still some answers that need to be taken care of, no doubt.
There certainly is, and I wonder if down the stretch, certainly that's an area that, in terms of the rest of the roster, could definitely be improved. Wonder maybe, depending on how their season goes, if they would mind the Miami Marlins again. Richard Blyer is a guy that is going to be due a lot of money after this year. I wonder if Miami wouldn't cut bait because they had lots of success with Simber.
They had a ton of success with Simber. I mean, you look at two unheralded heroes from that bullpen or that season, period. Adam Simber and Trevor Richards got some big outs. And was it a blockbuster deadline deal? No. But again, difference in kind of looks, their repertoire, they found something, identified it, and Trevor Richards, took off after okay success in the Rays, not that great success in his short time with the Brewers. Blue Jays ID'd that, and then made those guys very, very valuable pieces of the bullpen. So you hope that they can grab some sort of that success that they had last year and get it right out of the gate.
Absolutely. And you bring up Nate Pearson as well, a guy who's been talked about for years now. If he's healthy and can dart 100, 101 past guys and find the strike zone and stay healthy, he's a big, big X factor for the Jays. Let's talk about the batting lineup, which is the talk of the baseball world, isn't it? And let's start. You referenced my other team I like to cheer for, I guess, the Oakland A's. And my favorite player in the major leagues, Matt Chapman, is a Toronto Blue Jay. I tweeted relentlessly the last year, and I called it. My friend Rob Longley, of course, said, you called this. Matt Chapman, the only place I was okay with him going was the Jays. My wish came true. The Jays just got, in my opinion, probably the best defensive infielder in baseball. We're talking about a 2-time Platinum Glove winner. I don't think there's a better defensive third baseman. You can talk about his struggles at the plate, still hit 27 bombs last year. You can talk about the hip surgery. Defensively, there is nobody better at eating runs alive than Matt Chapman. What have you seen out of him in spring training? Just how impressive is this guy to watch?
That guy, it's about his business. It's about, of course, the pedigree that he brings to the Blue Jays. And automatically, he's got some street cred when he walks in. He's been in the postseason with the Oakland Athletics. He's obviously got the hardware to go along with what he brings defensively. And that was the absolute dire need that the Blue Jays had to address. That is it. They led Major League Baseball in ground balls induced to third base. And you saw the setback last year. Could you field it? Yeah. Were the throws, though, difference makers? Yeah, they were, because Vladdy had to leave the base. Sometimes throws that go wide are challenging to dig out of the dirt. Nothing against Santiago Espinal. By trade as a middle infielder. Kevin Biggio, not really a third baseman at the major league level. And Kevin was beat up last year, and you wonder, what if he was healthy all season long, does that change what he does at third base? Maybe when the lights go bright, but the Blue Jays get creative with their positioning. But having Matt Chapman in the mindset of how the Blue Jays want to do things defensively changes everything for the Blue Jays. It makes Bo better. It makes the throws coming from third base easier on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And it also like realigns how the Blue Jays can do things defensively, because having Matt Chapman good to the glove side makes Bo Bichette's pressure to the backhand side less. That means they can move him 3 steps towards the middle of the diamond. And that's one of the things that I'm watching in spring training is how they shifted Bo in the middle of the diamond, or more towards the middle of the diamond now, to close the gap on anything that is ticketed towards the middle. They're still going to shift a lot. They are going to shift a lot. But having Matt Chapman in there increases things for his overall vacuum availability to suck up anything that he can get to, and also what he improves in the confidence of Bo Bichette to his left and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on the receiving end. So defensively, you know what he is. I think he's destined for a big year. And he told me on the diamond, he said, all offseason now, away from the hip injury, his body recovers. He could get a full season of weight workout. And for working out him is meaningful because it's about the lower half in strength. You know, he's a flexible guy. He's very strong. He likes to bend deep at the waist. And with that hip injury, it limited mobility, it limited flexibility, it limited the production defensively. And of course, you saw the impact at the bat. And he's a guy that loves to hit at Rogers Center, you know, so he's feeling confident about how he's jumping into competition this year physically. He feels very comfortable in the place that he's going to play 81 games this season at Rogers Center in a backdrop that he loves to hit at. So I think these are just stars aligning for him, no doubt.
He's just such an incredible player to watch. I'm looking forward to an offensive bounce back. I mean, again, he still hit 27 bombs. I mean, his average and OBP definitely suffered. You could tell the hip was bugging him as he turned through those power swings that he likes to dig at. But defensively, even with that hip bugging him, still among the league leaders, top 3, as a matter of fact, in defensive runs saved for Oakland. He's just a freak. Speaking of freaks on this team, what a luxury we have in this lineup. I mean, it's just loaded with power bats and guys that can go about doing damage differently. From Springer leading off, hopefully we've got a healthy season. I want to see 140 plus games of Springer dingers leading off. Teoscar, Vlad, who, you know, outside of an unbelievable rare season by Ohtani, would have run away with the MVP. Unfortunately, he had that year where Ohtani did what he did, but he could easily do it again this year. Bo, Lourdes Gurriel, they add Raimel Tapia, who is a good average hitter and a left-handed bat. Boy, this lineup is so scary, and I haven't even mentioned the catchers, where Alejandro Kirk is going to catch on opening day, but he could see a lot of DH time too. Man, they have a lot of options.
Well, and you left the big guy, Teoscar Hernandez, you know, out of the conversation as well. This is it. You know, this is what you build for, right? You want a long lineup. You can't take any breaths off. This is going to be a very dangerous lineup against the American League East. And that's the important thing, right? You can't have empty at bats. You can't give away at bats. And that's what the Blue Jays have really been gunning for as well. So for Toronto, you know, with this lineup, can you get a little creative with it? You can. There's no doubt. And you're going to have to, right? Bo Bichette wants to play 162. I don't know that Bo Bichette is going to be allowed to play 162. I think, you know, the way that he plays, the sure-handedness of Santiago Espinal, the ability to spell him out short. You may have Bo in the lineup and getting a half day because he's going to DH, but it has to be if he can continue to hold his own, and he's proven he can hold his own, and he can go out there with the glove and do it as well. So these are guys that certainly can do damage. I mean, 1 through 9 in that batting order. And it's interesting looking at the lineup against the Tigers, and Charlie Montoya mentioning, you know, this might be in the top half, really, how I go with the opening day lineup in George Springer, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Teoscar Hernandez, down to Bo Bichette, which is interesting, right? You get Bo into that cleanup spot and you get him away, and that was the combination. To use Bo, to use Marcus Semien, who's your leadoff guy? How do you do it around George Springer? Obviously, if he's healthy, you want George in that leadoff spot. That's where George, if asked, where do you want to bat? He wants to bat first and ambush guys. And that's good news for the Blue Jays. But, you know, I don't think the dust has settled on how the Blue Jays get their batting order lined up. Regardless, though, you can pull the names out of the hat and still be in a really, really good position.
You really can. What a luxury. It's incredible. And you kind of mentioned, the Yankees and some of the other teams in this division. Of course, we know what the Rays are. They're going to play small ball. They're going to get some contributions from some guys that maybe surprise you. Wander Franco, of course, probably going to take a step forward. They actually paid him. So that'll be interesting. Boston making some noise with Story, of course, Devers, Bogarts. They've got weapons. The Yankees, let's be honest, no disrespect to the city of Baltimore, beautiful ballpark. Let's just set them aside. The Yankees are I can't get my head around what they are. A lot of power, still not great average. Gary Sanchez leaves. I like the addition of Isaiah Kiner-Falefa in terms of flexibility for them. But now they've got this weird shuffle. Josh Donaldson's a Yankee. It looks extremely bizarre. You mentioned the pitching beyond Garrett Cole. I don't really know what they have there. Is Nestor Cortez going to eat more innings? I guess it looks like he can. What's Jameson Taillon like? There are a lot of question marks. And when's the last time you could say that the Yankees have a ton more question marks than the Jays do?
Never. Really, let's be honest. New York goes out and the Yankees became the Yankees because they do very Yankee things, but just watching them in camp, that doesn't look like a very athletic. It looks like a kind of trending towards aging with the players that are out there. And when anybody in New York gets injured, they get injured for like a month or many months. Aaron Hicks is probably maybe now that with the addition of Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, he might be the best athlete that the New York Yankees have. Gleyber Torres maybe second. I don't know. But other than that, if Aaron Hicks has been so inconsistent in and out of that lineup, and just they paid him a ton of money and he's hardly been on the field. You're just waiting for that next shoe to drop. Josh Donaldson, you're waiting for his injury history to pop up in New York again. Judge and Stan, anytime that they're injured, they're done for a month at a time. Even if they come back in 3 weeks, it's a week of rehab before they get back in the lineup. So that means it's a month. They can mash, sure. But can they be sustainable? I don't know. I really don't know if they're the Yankees pitching staff, and that's going to determine the success of their season, is going to rely on Jordan Montgomery to be one of these big horses when the bell rings. And I just, you watch them a lot in spring training because they're right around the corner in these pods. When going over to Tampa, we see a lot of the regulars play. It just, you're left wanting to see more from them. They've got the stars. They've got the star power with the names. You just haven't seen it translate yet.
You certainly haven't. And they're not that good defensively either. And where does DJ LeMahieu play in all this? There are a lot of
He might be on the bench. On opening day, he might be on the bench. You got a guy that is a Gold Glove winner and a batting champ that might not be in the starting lineup for the New York Yankees. Now, again, factor in all these different things that we're talking about, right? Because if somebody gets injured, then DJ LeMahieu is going to play a lot of time. Yeah, likely at third base without Josh Donaldson. Or does Gleyber Torres go over there without Josh Donaldson? And does DJ LeMahieu go in the middle of the diamond? He can play first base, that if Anthony Rizzo gets dinged up, you've got him as the insurance policy as well. It's just a really interesting clubhouse right now with the New York Yankees, and I'm still not sure they're the number one opponent that the Blue Jays have to be worried about.
I completely agree. I still think it's Tampa myself until someone like Boston says otherwise. Ben, before we let you go, we did this with you last year heading into the season. We'll do some over-unders. And you were actually very good with your over-under calls last year, to be fair. I'll start with the win total, the one that everybody cares about. 91 last year. Obviously looking for a lot more. 94.5 over-under.
Over.
Where do you think they land?
I believe this is a pitching staff that can get him there. There are a couple of things that are going to have to go right. But one, I like 1 through 5. And also, I like some of the insurance, 6-year free agents and the guys that are going to go to AAA. I've also seen better stuff out of Trent Thornton. You've got Thomas Hatch coming back from an injury, now a full year removed from that. So a lot better situations from the depth pieces that you need and the ability to maneuver them on and off the roster. Casey Lawrence is going to be better. Interesting story with Matt Gage being in the rotation with AAA Buffalo. I think it's a better pitching situation for the Blue Jays. So if there is a need for a spot start or somebody that's going to be down for a couple of turns of the rotation, I think the Blue Jays are better positioned to cover it with the guys that they have. You asked me or pressed me on the win total. I believe that they're better than a 91 win team. I think they're somewhere. I think they can flirt with 100, but I wouldn't be stunned to see 98 wins at the close of business. I really wouldn't.
98, you read my mind. That was what I was going to say. Club record 99. They've never hit a century. What a way to do it with this lineup. That would be really, really special. All right. Vlad Jr., 48 last year. Over, under 45 and a half bombs.
Over. I'm going to say that with, a lot of conviction. I'm going over.
Can he kiss 50, 55?
I think he can get to 50. 55 will be interesting on where he plays and who he plays over the course of the duration, right? But Vladdy's just a different kind of beast, and something clicked in personal conviction to make sure that his body was ready for the long haul going into 2021. He knew the lapses, and that knee was barking a little bit down the stretch, and why he sort of tapered off. If Vladdy is healthy, and Vladdy looks really, really healthy right now, really, really strong. And again, this is a guy, that's getting into still in a young 20s, but as he gets into his mid 20s, that body is going to mature, and you're starting to see some of the baby face leave Vladdy. So he's going to get a little bit of man strength. He's going to have that man strength coming. And right now with what he's doing with the bat, he's hitting it. He's a little bit out of sync right now at the plate. He's not as locked in as what he was, but it's going to come. I think he's going to get a lot of at-bats and get locked back in when the bell rings next Friday. And that's why I think he's going to have the ability to not only hit 50 home runs, but this is a guy that might hit 330 while doing it.
Yeah, and that's so impressive. The average and the OBP is really improving for him. It's not just all about the power. And man, when he hits the ball, he hits it hard. Second over the last 2 seasons in pitches, hit over 112 miles per hour off the bat. Pretty incredible stuff. All right, I'll also ask you this. We know that the Jays, when you set yourself up with a roster like this, there's never enough tinkering that can be done. And we talked about the bullpen and how there's probably some room to add and improve. And we all know as teams drop off closer to July 31st, teams like the Jays swimming in the water can take advantage. I'll ask you this, final one, over 3.5 trades for the Blue Jays this year.
That's a really good question. There are so many things that go into that. And we're talking about big league trades, not like the kind of middling deals. You want to know trades that impact the major league roster, right?
Yes. Yep.
I'm going to go under. I don't think. I think the Blue Jays are going to be under the 3.5. I think
I can see that too, barring injuries. Injuries is the wild card there, but you're right. I think they're probably, the way they sit now, I think they're maybe 2 bullpen arms away in terms of improving on maybe some young guys that maybe they feel safe there. I don't know if they'll go over, but you never know with injuries. Regardless, this is setting up to be one of the most fun Toronto Blue Jay seasons ever, and you can hear this man on the airwaves, especially in this local area here in Midwestern Ontario, CKNX AM 920. We air all the Blue Jays games. You will hear that man, Ben Wagner, on the call. Ben, we really appreciate this. Enjoy the rest of your time down watching Grapefruit League action. So excited to get you back up here and get the Jays up here rocking the roof off the dome. It's going to be an incredible season, my friend. Thank you for doing this.
I cannot wait to be in Toronto and bring you guys opening day and then 162. It's going to be awesome. So settle in on 920 and get ready for a wild, and at times white knuckle ride to the finish.
I can't wait. It's going to be the best. Ben Wagner, the radio voice of your Toronto Blue Jays. We appreciate your time. When we come back, we're going to talk with our friend Duane Steinel from Trainwreck Sports on a bunch of things, the deadline deals in the NHL, his Buffalo Sabres. Boy, they're improving. Bright future finally, and a number of other hockey stories, including more controversy from the Department of Player Safety, our favorite organization in the NHL. That's coming up next here on Instigating. Welcome Welcome back to Instigating with Clarkey and Drury, brought to you by our friends at Coolbet Canada, the Listowel Squash Courts, Listowel Vision Care, and See the Game. We appreciate our friend, the radio voice of the Toronto Blue Jays, Ben Wagner, for joining us in our last segment. Now we're very pleased to be joined by another great friend of the show, my buddy from down in Buffalo, Duane Steinel, Mr. Sabre himself, sporting some new duds, man, looking sharp in the new jersey. How you feeling?
Pretty good, man. I got home from work. We had a meeting right after, and walked in the door, greeted the dog, and then on the stove, my neighbor was nice enough to put it in the house for me. My neighbor lets my dog in and out of the house while I'm at work, but he put it on the stove, and there it was, the Heritage Classic Alex Tuch jersey. And I figure, if you're not first, you're last. So I wanted to be the first one to get the C on it, and so I can stay claim to it, because inevitably I do believe Alex Tuch is the next captain of the Buffalo Sabres.
Well, it makes an awful lot of sense. And I know we talked about that at length when I was on your show for the trade deadline. It makes a ton of sense. Native of the area, he loves being a Sabre. He stated right when he got traded that he was excited to be there. And that's kind of something that I think is going to start to turn the tide, maybe finally, for the Sabres, man. Like, hey, they're playing really well down the stretch. I mean, yeah, sure. I know they're not going to make the playoffs again, but man, it finally feels like there's some progress here.
Are they mathematically eliminated?
They're not mathematically eliminated. It would take. Hey, we've seen stranger things happen, I guess. I'm
not going to say I'm holding hope. I was just curious. I know Seattle.
They're not mathematically yet. No.
I think Seattle was mathematically eliminated after their loss to Vegas last night, right?
And I believe Montreal is mathematically out as well. Yeah, and Arizona. Yeah, which makes a lot of sense.
I wonder. I kind of got into it on Twitter last week, and I said, I'd be really. I said, if you would have given me a healthy Craig Anderson all season, or just not. I didn't state it in the tweet, but healthy Craig Anderson all season, he doesn't get hurt, and just legitimate NHL goaltending all year, I think this team could have made a push to the playoffs. I'm not saying they're a playoff team. I don't think so, but I think you could have been sitting at this point in the season, maybe 10 points back going into your final 15 games.
I agree. Why could they not be sitting where the Columbus Blue Jackets are sitting right now? Like in that bubble, in the mix. And I mean, the way they've played down the stretch here, it certainly looks like they're gearing up to potentially do that next season. And really, I mean, you've got to just be satisfied with how some of these young guys are coming along, particularly Alex Tuch. I mean, what else can you say? He's just been dynamite since he came into the lineup after injuries earlier in the year. Mm-hmm. But I mean, wow, Tage Thompson. I mean, this kid is electric.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see what to make sure. Hopefully, this isn't kind of like a one-hit wonder with him, and that he still performs as well next season. Because this is the first time we've really we've seen him reach the potential we thought he had after trading for him in the Ryan O'Reilly trade, which up until this season, it was an absolute disaster for the Sabres. It sucks, to see, and it could have went any worse, right? You trade him, and immediately, he goes and wins a cup, Conn Smythe, and the Selke Trophy, all the very next year. It couldn't have went worse for Sabres fans. Like, honestly, it couldn't have. And then to see, Patrick Berglund dip out the way he did, Saboka was just a waste of a roster spot. And then Tage Thompson, I think we corrected Ryan Johnson with the draft pick, but who he's we'll see. Jury's still out on him, but Tage Thompson up until this season, he was a bust, and it was starting to look like that was possibly one of the worst trades in franchise history, if not the worst. And it's starting to finally kind of turn for the better for Sabres fans with the way Tage has performed. But yeah. I'm excited to see what's to come. Like you said, I think trending next year with the right moves. Either I know we mentioned it on our trade deadline show on Two Goalies One Mike, but we mentioned that given maybe on draft day you see some movement from the Sabres, and I agree with you. I think you will. I don't think they're going to use all three of those first round draft picks. I think they're going to make a move to make this team better in the now. On draft day. And You're adding Owen Power. You're adding Jack Quinn, who's absolutely having a dynamite year. He's been injured a lot this season, but he's well over a point a game per player in the AHL right now. You're adding a JJ Paterka, and adding to be determined players, whoever it might be, whether it be the draft or whether it be via trade or free agency. I'm excited, and I guess that I truly do believe, and I guess that I got attacked by a lot of the analytics nerds on Sabres Twitter, and I respect analytics a lot. But I mean, I think and we've talked about it. There is a game within the game of hockey that numbers and charts and graphs don't read, and you can really only understand it unless you've actually And this isn't a knock against people who haven't played hockey, but you can only really understand it unless you've actually played the game of hockey at really any competitive level. And those people tend to not have played hockey, so they don't understand. And when I say, better goaltending translates to, they tried to make it seem like a goaltender isn't going to have a better wins against the wins against replacement.
WAR.
Yeah. They said that he's not worth 26 wins or 26 points. I'm sorry. Added to yours. I was like, but no, maybe not. But he's more of an impactful player than goaltenders are more impactful on wins and losses than any single player on the ice, because a goaltender could have a bad 5-10 minutes and you're down in the hole for 5-0, whereas any single player has a bad shift or two. That might not be the case, and they can go out and redeem themselves in the following shifts. And that's kind of like the heat I was taking. I'm sorry, kind of going on a TED talk here, but that was the kind of the heat I was taking. So he's not worth that many points in your lineup. I'm like, yeah, maybe so, but having that stability in net is going to have that ripple effect throughout the team, because you have a goalie in net that you can trust. Whereas you didn't have that with Dustin Tokarski, Malcolm Subban, and Aaron Dell, who in the time that Craig Anderson was hurt, they went 7-31.
Yeah. I mean, that says everything, doesn't it? And yeah, is Craig Anderson a world-beating goalie? Like,
no,
he once was for a stretch. No, he's not. But I mean, he has actually played really well. I mean, this is a guy who's kissing 40 years old here. He's had a great career and has done some incredible things, including dragging a not very good defensive Ottawa Senators team to a conference final that they lost in double overtime, by the way. It's incredible. And who doesn't like Craig Anderson? He's a really good guy. But that'll be something that the Sabres continue to build on. They've got Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen down in the minors. You mentioned Jack Quinn. And of course, we can't talk about the future without talking about Owen Power, who is just, well, he looks like a monster.
Yeah, I agree. Power has, not this coming weekend, but the following, at TD Garden in Boston with the Frozen Four coming up. We could see that guy in a Sabres jersey as soon as maybe the week following. We don't know, because all signs point to him signing almost immediately after the college season ends. And add a piece like that to your lineup. Do I expect him to come out there and play 20-25 minutes a night? No, absolutely not.
No,
he's better than a lot of the guys that we have currently on our blue line without ever playing a single NHL game. He's going to be better. And it's going to help your team. It's going to help defensively in your own end. It's going to help you bring some more jam to your game because he's a big kid. And, if you've watched any Michigan hockey games, he gets involved offensively quite a bit. He buzzes around the front of the net in the offensive zone quite often, especially on the power play. Like, he's not afraid to get involved. That's going to help a lot too. And you've seen what the steps that Rasmus Dahlin has taken this year. And, I think under Marty Wilford, he was just on the After the Whistle podcast with Andrew Peters and Craig Rivet. Marty Wilford said, has really helped bring Dahlin along ever since stepping into that defensive coach role for the Buffalo Sabres. And not to mention Granato, but, if that's what you're going to get and that type of coaching you're going to get with Owen Power, that, helped, Rasmus Dahlin finally take this huge step forward. And again, if you're watching Sabres games, this kid is fearless. He is absolutely fearless with the puck now. There is no hesitancy in his game. He's playing with a ton of swagger. And for the first time, I think, since we've drafted him, you're finally starting to see the player that we all thought we were getting when we took him first overall, like 4 years ago.
I completely agree. And I mean, it's great to see. We talked about that a ton on Two Goalies, One Mic, Duane's great podcast. Of course, you can find that on Trainwreck Sports. You guys do a great job with that. It's always fun to be a part of and chat with you guys. I'm glad you brought up Rasmus Dahlin because it ties in to what we want to talk about next. And that's the Department of Player Safety. And Rasmus Dahlin was on the receiving end of, a pretty controversial play where Austin Matthews, rightfully so, got a 2-game suspension. And now, Duane, we've talked about this before on your show. Is there anything in hockey more frustrating than the Department of Player Safety? It's such an asinine department. I don't know what George Peros is thinking half the time. Of course, we saw Taylor Hall the other night sucker punch Ilya Lyubushkin. Was it the worst thing I've ever seen? 100% no. People were trying to compare it to the Todd Bertuzzi.
No, don't even get me started on that.
Outrageous.
Don't even get me started on that.
No, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, that was one of the most heinous things that's ever happened on an NHL ice rink.
Right.
100%.
Criminal.
It was criminal. He sued. Well, Steve Moore sued Todd Bertuzzi in court. And it wasn't like that, but like, you look at the inconsistency, and not even so much in that respect. Like, do I think Taylor Hall probably should have got a game for that? I mean, if the refs thought it was worth 5 minutes, I don't understand the league going, oh, well, the guy served a 5-minute major and got kicked out. We don't need to suspend him. Start suspending people. Like, what? Yeah. What is this $5,000 fine nonsense? I don't know what it does for anybody.
I like the $5,000 fine. That's like, if I'm Taylor Hall, I'm laughing as I sign that check.
Like 50 cents to him.
You know what I mean? Do I think he should have gotten suspended? I can go either way on that. Is it a suspendable offense? Yes. Am I upset? And I hate Taylor Hall.
Yes,
I know. Hate Taylor Hall.
Why, Duane?
we don't have enough time on this podcast to say why. But I hate Taylor Hall, and I'm okay with them not suspending him. Now, in terms of a fine, I think that needs to be a lot heftier of a fine, to the point where when he sees that letter or that email or that text message of what he's been fined, Taylor Hall's like, oh, wow, that's a lot. Like, you need that type of a reaction from a player for them to not do that again. Taylor Hall isn't even thinking, he's like, okay, whatever. Like, that guy's made how much money over his career? He made $8 million from Buffalo alone for one season for 2 goals. Scored 2 goals. He ate $8 million for 2 goals.
That's why Duane doesn't like Taylor Hall, everybody.
The guy mailed it in. The guy mailed it in after Jack got hurt. You could just tell from watching him play. Like, and this is where I get pissed off with a lot of the analytics people. It's just like, oh, well, it's expected goals for was this.
That's the most useless stat ever.
It really is. Like, no, man, because if you watch the way like Jeff Skinner scores his goals, he's not afraid to be engaged on the boards around the net. He's not afraid to take a beating to score a goal. Taylor Hall was doing drive-bys every night around the net. Like, he wasn't stopping and being engaged. Like, no, not like he was in Boston when he got to Boston. It was a joke. And I don't care what his expected goal is for. Anybody can be a perimeter shooter and shoot pucks and get scoring chances, but he wasn't following up. Like, he wasn't getting engaged in scrums in front of the net, where Jeff Skinner like really made that $9 million a year, got that $9 million contract, just sitting around the net and being a very useful 5-on-5 hockey player. And, so I went off on a tangent there, man. I completely forgot I was talking.
No, that's okay. Department of Player Safety. No, like Taylor Hall, but I understand you're reckoning with it there, right? And why you can go either way, because we have no idea. We could see a play like that again tonight and have no idea what George Peros is going to do. We have no idea. Dylan Larkin got suspended for something similar to that earlier, and then the other night we saw Max Pacioretty slam Chris Letang in the back of the head, a guy who's had a number of concussions, and there wasn't even a penalty on that play. Like, the refs tie into this too. And again, I know that there's a reffing shortage across all levels of hockey, and that's a major problem. But in the professional leagues, like, I don't know, Duane. Have you? I personally feel like I've never seen the reffing be worse.
Yeah,
I feel like we say that every year.
Yeah, it's been pretty terrible, man. In terms of, here's a question. We talked about Todd Bertuzzi and Steve Moore, in today's game, because the game then is so much different than the game now is so much different now than it is.
Oh, yeah.
Then. What does Todd Bertuzzi get if he pulled? And you have to take into consideration everything that happened. Okay, there was the hit on Marcus Noslin. Mind you, he played. I'm almost positive there was one game in between the initial Noslin hit and the T. Bertuzzi incident. And there were playoff implications on that game in between. So nothing happened. Nothing transpired. But there was a lot of talk and a lot of chatter from everybody in that Canucks locker room. And they made it known they were coming for Steve Moore. They made no mistake about it. Everybody knew it was coming. Brad May talked about it. Matt Cook talked about it. They all talked about it. They said there was going to be retribution. So that right there, it's premeditated, right? It's all premeditated.
100%. Yep.
And what pissed me off about the whole thing is he answered the bell with Matt Cook. He fought Matt Cook in that game. So it should have been dead and done there because Noslin, I'm almost positive, not only played in that game, but he played in the game before that too. I'm almost positive he did. So it's not like he had a season and engineer. Not like, again, it was a bad, and in the game of hockey, it's such a controlled chaos. And when things are happening at a high speed, sometimes it's hard to control what happens, during all that. And I'm not saying Steve Moore was headhunting Marcus Noslin. It was a bad hit. But at the end of the day, it's it's not even in the same atmosphere what Steve Moore did to Noslin and what Todd Bertuzzi did to Steve Moore. And it was all premeditated. He sucker punched him in the back of the head, and then he drove him down into the ice. And yeah, you can say that maybe he broke his neck from players piling on top of him. Absolutely.
It didn't help.
It didn't help, no. But the fact of the matter is, he's not in that situation with 8 or 10 guys on top of him if Todd Bertuzzi isn't assaulting him. That was assault. Like, I don't care if it happens in a hockey game or not. That was assault, and he should have been arrested, and he should have been charged, and there is no reason he should have ever played a hockey game for the rest of his career after that. And I am very passionate about that because that was such a dirty play. That was hands down the dirtiest thing I've ever seen in a hockey game.
I agree. I mean, we've seen lots of bad plays over the years, sure. And I mean, being a Caps fan, I love when people try and tell me, Tom Wilson is the boogeyman or something. And in today's game, he is, but
he doesn't hold a candle. He doesn't hold a candle to the Marty.
In my lifetime, I can't remember.
No,
I can't remember anything. The only thing I've seen in sports, and this will transition nicely. I mean, the Department of Player Safety, I did see a funny tweet. Mike Stevens of the Hockey News tweeted that calling it the Department of Player Safety is goofy because they don't care about player safety. It would be like a firefighter being called Johnny Arson. And I laugh at that. But yeah, that was the dirtiest thing. The only thing that I can equate it to, and this will transition nicely into me asking you a bit about football, was the Garrett incident with Mason Rudolph, where he clubbed him over the head with his helmet.
Yep.
And luckily Mason Rudolph was okay. But I mean, Myles Garrett could have killed him.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like that wasn't both incidents are clear intents to maim or injure.
Oh yeah.
Straight up.
100%.
There is literally nothing about the sport or the game within the game that they're playing that caused them to do what they did.
No.
Nothing. It's sick. I watched after I saw that stupid tweet from, I'm assuming it was somebody with the Maple Leafs earlier. You might have seen it too, where they tried to equate the Bertuzzi and the.
A few people did. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just said, where I can watch the Taylor Hall thing over and over and over again and not get queasy. I can't watch the Bertuzzi thing more than once because you watch what happens and we know that he never played hockey and he broke his neck, but just watching that in real time or slow motion, it's so hard to watch, man.
It's unfathomable.
It's so hard.
It really is.
I thought back then he should have never played hockey again because since it ended Steve Moore's career. And I would still think today, if that were to happen today, and this isn't, I don't think this should consider me being soft or some, you're soft, man. It's hockey. Like, no, man,
that wasn't hockey.
That wasn't hockey. It wasn't hockey at all. And he should have never played hockey again after that, either if it happened then, when it happened then, or if it happens today.
100%. A lot of people felt the same way, me included. I couldn't believe that Bertuzzi was allowed to play after that. It was sad. Speaking of that football incident with Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph, big news in Western New York. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills are going to be getting a new stadium.
Yep.
And the public are footing a hefty chunk of the bill. 1.6 billion, I believe the total project is.
Yep.
And public funding is going to equate to about 850 mil. I know you love the Bills. You're Buffalo through and through, Duane, of course. And everybody make sure right when you're done here, check out Duane's podcast, Two Goalies, One Mic. How do you feel about this, man? The Pagulas, boy, they're getting a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah, they are. Listen, everybody knows my gripes with the Pagula family. All right. I at the end of the day, I'm grateful that they kept the Bills in Buffalo, and I'm grateful the Sabres are in Buffalo as well. Because of them, even though I don't know if the Sabres ever would have left Buffalo, because you know how Bettman is with keeping teams in market. I don't think it ever actually would have happened. I think Bettman would have done his best to keep the Sabres in Buffalo, because he knows how much of a great hockey market Buffalo is, and he doesn't want to ruin that. But I know the stadium, I'm sure it's going to look phenomenal. I think it's going to be state of the art, and I can't wait to see how it turns out. But it's going to seat less people. What is it, the PSLs? Is that what they call them?
The lounges or whatever.
Yeah. I'm kind of uneducated when it comes to that, but apparently they're saying they're not going to buy Bills fans out of the stadium, or push them out with the pricing on these seats. This is gonna be built for Buffalo. So I forget who it was. He said "built for Buffalo" quite a few times, meaning that's probably going to be the next tagline that the Pagulas try and trademark and sell those to Bills fans. Guarantee it. And I wanted a dome, man. I really, really did. It's staying in Orchard Park too, and which is good. It's good.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Give me a dome, man. I think in terms of the fans, and not to mention it would just be a year-round moneymaker for you. You could hold concerts in there. You can bring big time artists there to perform all year round. Whether I went to go see U2 and Guns N' Roses there when they started doing stadium concerts again. You could sell that, especially with the with the people from Canada. You could easily sell out a Metallica concert there.
Oh yeah, easily. No question.
Whether it's 2022 or friggin' 1999, you know what I mean? Like Metallica in Buffalo, they're selling out that stadium. U2 nearly sold it out. I think back when they did a concert years ago. I think it was in either August or even September. You could have big time acts there, whoever you want, honestly, whoever you want.
It's a joke. And I mean, Terry, I wish you had just drilled another oil well and paid for the damn stadium yourself. I can't stand it when owners do this. Duane, we're out of time, man. I appreciate you doing this. You're always so much fun to talk to. You're as passionate as it gets. Two Goalies, One Mic. Listen everywhere you get podcasts. They stream it live on Twitter, YouTube. They're everywhere. It's impossible not to find Duane on social media. Check out his content, Trainwreck Sports. They've got great content on there, buddy. I really appreciate you doing this, man.
Anytime, Ryan. Like I said, I'm sorry I couldn't get on when your co-host was here, but I appreciate you having me on, man. And anytime you want to hop on with us, you're always welcome.
100%, man. You know where to find me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to and watching Instigating with Clarkey and Drury. Remember, Friday nights at 8, Sunday nights at 9, we are on Whiteman TV. That's Channel 6. We debut on YouTube 9 p.m. Friday nights. You can find the podcast version on all the best podcast apps. Follow us on social media at Instigating Pod, and we really appreciate our friend Ben Wagner, the radio voice of the Blue Jays, and our friend Duane Steinel from Two Goalies, One Mic for joining us on the show this week. We'll be back next week with more Instigating.